Hot take, Pokemon Sword and Shield are the best Pokemon games. And on that note, almost every new Pokemon game has been better than the one that came before it. I'm not quite ready to say that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are the best because I do think the characters and settings are all way worse in them than they were in Sword and Shield. And they do have a lot of bugs, even though mechanically they have a lot of improvements from Sword and Shield. Also, Gold and Silver, and by extension Heart Gold and Soul Silver, stand out from the rest of the series by having so much post-game content. It sort of puts them above most of the other games in the series as well. On the flip side, Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon are by far the worst Pokemon games. They have way too many cutscenes and too much hand-holding. It may be April, the month of fools, but there are no lies in this video. Everything I'm about to say is my honest opinion, and if you don't agree, great. Let me know in the comments section, because I can talk about this stuff all day. Okami is not very good. It's unique and has a creative concept, but it's just not fun to play and there are way too many cutscenes. And if I wanted a Zelda game where I play as a wolf, I'd just play Twilight Princess. While we're on the topic, why do people say Okami is like a Zelda game? I haven't played it in a few years, but from what I remember, it played more like a generic beat-em-up game where you occasionally write on the screen with janky analog controls. Speaking of beat-em-ups, the only good beat-em-up or hack-and-slash game is Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. God Hand is bad, No More Heroes is bad, Bayonetta is bad. I think the only reason I like Metal Gear Rising is because of the soundtrack and Senator Armstrong.
Nanomachine, son!
Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes is better than the original. I don't play Metal Gear Solid for the gameplay, at least not the first one anyway. And the remake is not only nicer to look at, but it has all the improvements of MGS2. Sure, it may ruin some things, like some of the boss difficulties, and it may make some of the more serious moments more cheesy with Snake doing backflips and stuff, but Metal Gear Solid was never that serious to begin with. At least I don't take it seriously, and I don't think you're supposed to, at least not completely. Kojima's made it clear over the years that he loves mixing the dark and serious with the silly and absurd, and that's what I love about the series and why I think Twin Snakes ultimately makes the better game. Sonic 06 is not that bad. There are way worse games out there. In fact, here's a list of all the Sonic games that are worse than Sonic 06. The worst thing about Sonic 06 is definitely the loading screens. The Project 06 version of the game made by Chaos X is a legitimately good game. Also, I like Elise as a character, and I think Sonic and her have good chemistry. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is the best single-player Dragon Ball game. Dragon Ball Z Infinite World is the best multiplayer Dragon Ball game. Traditional fighting games like Street Fighter, Tekken, and even Marvel vs. Capcom to an extent get old pretty quickly for me, though I do really like the character roster in Marvel vs. Capcom. The Wii U was a highly unrated console, and the Wii U gamepad was one of the best ideas Nintendo has had. Unfortunately, it ultimately went underutilized due to circumstances. But have you guys played Nintendo Land? That was such a good game for parties. Having a separate screen for your friends to use was such a good idea. I just wish the Wii U could have lasted a little longer so more games could have utilized it. The 3D Zelda games are the only really good Zelda games. All of the 2D ones are good, but not great. The best 3D Zeldas are Breath of the Wild and Majora's Mask, and the worst one is easily Skyward Sword. Big open world games like Skyrim and the more recently released Hogwarts Legacy would be much better as MMOs. I feel like these maps would lend themselves perfectly to the MMO format, and I don't get what the point of customizing your character is if no one else is going to see them. The Last of Us is mediocre. Pretty much all those big budget AAA cinematic soda games are okay, but not great. The only exception is Spider-Man because of the amazing traversal mechanics. The PS2 Grand Theft Auto games were only good because of their originality. Big open world games like that were definitely a novelty at the time, especially in realistic settings. But every Rockstar game that's come out since then has just been the same dull formula and basically not worth playing. Star Fox Adventures is easily the best Star Fox game. I realize it's more of a Zelda game than a Star Fox game, but I don't care. There are just so many great things about it. The music is fantastic. I really like the new characters like Crystal and the Shopkeeper.
No, that's too low.
And even the ones I don't like have really creative and interesting designs. The dialogue is so cheesy in a good way.
Nobody ever brings me gifts anymore!
And on-rail shooters get boring after a while anyway. Star Fox Assault is the second best Star Fox game, again because of all the changes it brings to the Star Fox formula, and the great multiplayer mode. Final Fantasy XV is the best Final Fantasy game. If you want to know why, go watch my video on it. Final Fantasy VII comes close and probably would take the #1 spot if it had a faithful remake with today's modern graphics and fully voiced and animated cutscenes. Unfortunately, the remake we did get is bloated with tons of filler, and I think that takes a little bit away from the experience. That's not to say that Final Fantasy VII Remake is bad by any means. It's still one of my favorites. I just think it could have been my number one favorite if it had done some things a little differently. I might make a video on the Final Fantasy series as a whole someday because I have a lot of opinions. But to summarize, 15 is better than 7, which is better than 10, which is better than 8 and 9, which are better than all of the other 3D ones, which are better than all of the 2D ones. I'm sorry, but 3D games are just better. Kingdom Hearts 3 is just as good as Kingdom Hearts 2, if not better. They're both way better than Kingdom Hearts 1. Kingdom Hearts 1 had a solid foundation, but needed refining. KH2 introduced so many new story elements, which Chain of Memories tried to do, but fell a little flat just from being on substantially more limited hardware. And then Kingdom Hearts 3 was almost unbeatable in terms of its presentation. The ending may have been a little bit drawn out, but it still managed to wrap up everything pretty nicely, I think, after almost 20 years of build-up. The Big the Cat levels in Sonic Adventure 1 are fine. The flight levels are so much worse. The Werehog levels in Sonic Unleashed are fine. The flight levels are so much worse. Freedom Planet 1 was pretty good, but the levels were too long. I couldn't even make it past the third level of Freedom Planet 2 because of how long the levels were, and because of how overly complicated it was to get from level to level. Journey, Dear Esther, Gone Home, Flower, and Everyone's Gone to the Rapture are all boring and pretentious walking simulators. That being said, I did really like the Stanley Parable, Unfinished Swan, and Outer Wilds. In fact, Outer Wilds is one of my top favorite games of all time. Couldn't get into Subnautica though. Maybe I just need to give it another try, I don't know. Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1 is way better than Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2, primarily due to the level design, and because it was less gimmicky. The physics may have been slightly improved in Episode 2, but the stupid underwater segments and all the portions where you're forced to use tails make it significantly worse than Episode 1. Not completely gaming related, but the new Sonic Netflix show is terrible. I couldn't make it past the first episode. The Splatoon series is only worth playing for the multiplayer. The multiplayer is great, but the single player is just boring and repetitive. I may have gotten filtered by this one, but I didn't like the Witness at all. As far as I can tell, I've gotten about halfway through it, and I hear it gets better near the end, but I'm still not having a good time. If I'm halfway into the game and I don't like it, why continue playing it? My opinions on RPGs are complicated. I like Pokemon, Undertale, some of the Final Fantasies, and Tales of the Abyss. But I don't like the Persona series, Earthbound, Dragon Quest, or any of the other Tales series games. The generic high school setting in Persona bores me. The first few hours of Earthbound are way too slow for me to care about getting past them, and Dragon Quest just feels like generic Eastern fantasy, and so do most Tales games. And there you have it. Now it's time for y'all to roast me. Why are my opinions so garbage? Again, this video was not a joke. I really do hold all these opinions, and I know you guys probably don't agree with most of it, so let me know why in the comments and we can have a little chat. Maybe I'll make a follow-up later to respond to all your comments, I don't know, I'm running out of ideas here. We'll see. Thanks for watching.